Welcome back to the Womenemies Podcast. So happy to have you here. I'm in beautiful Seattle. As some of you know and some of you don't know, I was born in Greece, but I was raised in Seattle before going down to law school in California. And I'm visiting family here, and it always feels like home. So I'm very excited to be here. So this podcast, it's going to be part one of many parts. It's an ongoing conversation, and it's been impromptu because of my posts on social media when I talk about sometimes paying for the invisible work. And bear with me, I've been getting a lot of some positive feedback and some feedback that it really hit a nerve to some people. So what was this invisible labor? This was the invisible labor of the domestic engineers. We call them stay-at-home moms, which I prefer to say CEO of the household or domestic engineer, as we talked about in a prior podcast. It's CEO of the household. You're engineer of your household. You're overseeing so much work. We'll get into that. And I just asked a simple question, which was, do you think domestic engineers should have a salary? Should they also have a retirement fund? And just from that one clip, man, I've got some messages, I've gotten some posts of supporting it, and also of people saying, this is the stuff my son sends me when I bother him for being single. He says, this is what I have to deal with. Or people saying, if you say yes, it's a domestic engineer should receive a salary or a retirement fund, then just stay single. Or you're in a horrible situation if you're bringing that up. So I wanted to dissect that. And I also wanted to dissect other invisible labor that happens at work that is outside the home as well. So let's break down my question of, should domestic engineers, full-time parents who work inside the home and manage the entire household, should they receive a salary? I want to hear your thoughts on this. Arguments should be made that if you were to pay someone else to do the exact same jobs, so a house cleaner, a party planner, a receptionist, a nutritionist, a tutor, a cook, a night nurse, a chauffeur, all of those, if you go on Indeed.com, go online, there are hourly rates, there are minimum wage rates, there are salaried rates, because it is a service that provides value to the family. What happens? Okay, but that's also just mom, and I want to say, I know there are a lot of fathers that do that. In this case, we're looking at in a lot of the Western world and the United States, it is the mother, society-wise, that has been the one to be, as they call, quote unquote, called stay-at-home mom, the CEO of their house of domestic engineers. Why shouldn't she receive a salary? Okay, I had a really good point from somebody else saying, well, they're getting food, room, and board. Sure. But even live-in nannies, live-in house cleaners, all these other parts, room and board is a certain part. When you work as a party planner, event planner, a chauffeur, yes, you're paying your rent, but your salary outweighs your rent. So there should still be funds. Now, a lot of the time, and rightfully so, the family comes together and they say, we want one of the parents to be home to raise the kids, or right now, economically, we can't both work outside of the home and pay a full-time nanny because full-time nannies are expensive. So one of the parents will be a full-time domestic engineer, and that will be able to lower our bills in terms of nanny, house cleaner, tutor, childcare. All these different things will be able to be reduced, and it saves the family money. 1,000%, because you're doing it for the family. The person that goes outside the home, let's say hypothetically the husband, they're going out and working and getting a paycheck to go towards the benefit, hopefully, of the family. That's the goal. But what happens psychologically, even it's not the intent. It could be an amazing, well-meaning couple, and the children are growing up great. They feel securely attached. They're seeing their parents work together as a team, but they're seeing, the parent that is working outside of the home, their work is actually being valued and being paid. And the parent here that is doing all these tasks, they're not bringing in value. We're not valuing all of the hard work. And a lot of the time it's invisible. Have you ever tried to do one task with two toddlers interrupting you every 5 seconds? Your brain never gets to shut off. School, back to school, calendars, homework, college preparation, all of that is nonstop. So I remember too, when I made that transition, feeling like I was asking my husband for money. Like it was his money. And he never said it was his money. But it was the fact that I went from making a salary outside of the home to not, to paying bills. But if I wanted to purchase something for myself or something, I felt like I was not using my own money and that the work I did was not bringing value, even though I preach it, I write it down, I see everything. Sometimes psychologically, when you don't have that money coming in, you feel like the person outside of the home is bringing more value, which is not true. And right. So a lot of times we'll say, well, we can't afford a nanny. That's why one of the parents is being a stay-at-home parent. Absolutely. I'm not saying you have to pay the same rate as what you would pay a nanny, a tutor, a chauffeur. A lot of the times we wouldn't be able to afford it. No one would. I'm saying having a sit down, if it's a 2-parent household, having a sit down and saying, these are all the work that goes on from 6 in the morning till midnight, and I'm handling 90% of it, 80% of it. These are what would be paid if it was a salary and I was going to another house and doing it. So, okay, let's see. What do we bring in as a household monetarily? What does the one parent, what is their salary? Okay. After we pay the bills and the taxes and all the expenses, what is left over? Okay, let's set up a separate account for the stay-at-home parent. And every month, put a part of that money, whatever both parties agree to and feel comfortable, into their account to have something where they feel like this is, okay, this is my money to do things for me. And then everything else goes into the family expenses and the other partner can have that too. But just to feel like, they are monetarily bringing value and saving value for this family. If families listen, this is just open to conversation and it could be with a partnership. It could be talking with premarital, pre-baby agreements, post-baby agreements, sitting down. It could be a formal contract. It could be an agreement, whatever the couples feel comfortable, but having that conversation so that the work that is going on in the household is visible and not invisible, and that there's value and respect attached to it. When we come back to the salaries, it's something agreed upon, but it's that their work is bringing in money. But let's say there could be couples that say, I don't need a separate account. Anything I've discussed, there should be communication with my partner. And this, I should be able to do this, this, and this. This is expending money for me, spending money for a partner. We have one joint account. That's it. Great. We can, hopefully down the line, I want to have a financial planner on this podcast as well as a family law attorney. Another thing that hit a nerve, and I've received some messages, some very delightful messages, is when I said, should there be a retirement account opened for the spouse that is the stay-at-home parent, the domestic engineer, the CEO of their household? There should absolutely be one, because let me tell you something. So with the retirement account, again, this person is putting in work, and a lot of the time it's invisible. And my passion is to make it visible through writing it down, through conversations, through itemizing, through delegation of work. But this person is bringing immense value not only to their children, but to the household. And as we said, if it was an external job, they would either be an independent contractor or salaried, and they would have Social Security set up. They'd be paying in to retirement and so forth. So the parent that is working outside of the home has that set up, right? Why does that bring more value? So no, that is something with a financial planner that the couple comes back together and they say, these are our financials, these are our expenses. I have a retirement account. What can we also afford? We have to carve it out and put retirement for that spouse, because a lot of the time it's 5 years, 10 years, sometimes 20 years. And this is not a gift. This is well-earned money, and it should be decided by a family, because that work of being a stay-at-home parent, CEO of your household, domestic engineer, is valued. There's a monetary attached to it, and there should be retirement, not depending only on the spouse that's working outside the home. And all of these things, when there's discussions and values about each other's work, and discussions in the household between partners about what was done in the house, outside of the house, guess what? The kids are watching too. And they're saying, hey, they're both contributing to this household. Look at all this work that the domestic engineer is doing. And they'll value it more. They're not going to just see it as a given that the mother does. Now, another hypothetical is, and it's happening a lot, is right now we live in times where it's not feasible to have a one income household where one parent works outside of the home and brings in and supports the whole family. So both parents have to work. But guess what's happening? Even when that happens, 90% of the work of the domestic duties is going on to one spouse, and that happens to be the mother. Maybe there's a conversation there, a contract there about itemizing the duties that need to be done, and that's by writing it down and making it visible and delegating it out. But if it doesn't want to be delegated, maybe there is an increased retirement account for the one parent that's doing the extra duties. There's an increased account for the salary that they are bringing in to the family by doing all this work. These are questions to be asked, and it's questions that we should be asking. For many, many years, it wasn't fair. And I'm not saying it should, if it's the father that is doing all this work, it applies, this should not be male, female. This is who is doing the brunt of the domestic duties, because there's so much invisible labor. And it should not hit a nerve that we're discussing compensation retirement accounts for labor that would be paid if they weren't, quote unquote, the mom. Now, people bring up divorce. Like if there's a retirement account, okay, but when they're divorced and there's separation of assets, that should be taken into account. Absolutely. You're seeing what people have made in the household, both inside the household and outside the household, lifestyle support, and what, based on the laws and family laws at the time, which some will need to change, how will that continue? But imagine, there are so many stories we hear of the spouse that works outside of the home. When it's getting close to divorce time, they control the money, they control the attorneys. And when the divorce happens, the other spouse that has been providing so much value for decades to the household doesn't have the money in their account to get the same legal representation or to be okay when they divorce, even though it might have not ended on their terms or not been their fault. They have brought so much value for years and years and years, and they're the ones out in the cold. That's not fair. And the other spouse could be saying, I don't have any money to pay. But if over the years there was money carved out for a salary or retirement, it already would have been in a place that's to the side and saved. And there's economic safety right there, which provides more independence in a lot of areas of people's lives and can provide safety. So again, I want to get family law attorneys on this podcast. I want to get financial planners, but these should be questions that if you are in a loving, healthy relationship, these should be questions that don't hit a nerve, that be like, oh, this is an interesting point. How can we make it work with our family? Now let's switch to the work outside of the office. Let's switch to the work outside of the home when it's in a corporate setting, hypothetically. How many times have we heard of the word office mom? This is the company mom. She's the mom of the team because she's maternal. So that person is, always there for the non-professional things, the emotional security to help develop talent. You've never heard of the office dad, but let me just tell you, the invisible work that moms do in the home, the invisible work that the office moms and the managers do in the office, they need to be valued. Have you ever noticed that in a lot of offices, when it's baby shower planning, wedding planning, event planning, company holidays, women tend to be the ones that are doing that and planning the event, and it's not being allocated around throughout the office, or it's the administrative assistant, it's the executive assistant's role. And if that's in their duties when they signed up for it, great. Or if it's a volunteer thing, great. But how are they being recognized? With a star, with a thank you? Or when performance reviews come up, are the results, the economic results, the person who brought in the most leads, the person that accomplished this many billable hours, are they only getting rewarded? What about the person that has mentored even people who are not their direct report, who has planned events to build team morale, who has been a safe place for people to vent where they don't document it, they can just mentor and talk and people are free to talk to, free to cry to, free to discuss and talk about their fears and talk about their goals within the company without fear of retaliation or it being documented. Keeping the emotional safety of the office, of the team, of the company intact, where people are excited to show up for work every day and feel part of the team and feel invested. That takes time. But a lot of the time, the people that are getting rewarded are the people who have the most billable hours, the people who are bringing in the most leads, who can point to the direct money coming in and say, I did that, which is great. They should be rewarded. Just like in the home where a spouse can say, I make this amount of money, I'm adding this value. And the person who isn't being paid but doing the domestic engineers, they're not bringing value of the same or sometimes greater. They are. They don't feel like that. So in companies, how are we evaluating the invisible labor that goes into running a team to making it emotionally safe, employee engagement? Are we giving the same credence and value? Or are we only looking at results oriented? Because let me tell you, for the team to have people that are results oriented, that requires a leader, a manager, someone who believes in them, who's their safe space, someone who recruited them, someone who made it look like the office is a place where it is a team and it's exciting to come to work. Because when people are burnt out, they don't feel engaged, they don't feel appreciated, they're not going to give you the results you want. So that's it for today. I have a lot more questions. And if you are a family law attorney, a financial planner, a corporate executive, an HR executive, and you want to share your perspective on valuing employees in and outside of the household, I would love to have a conversation. So send this to a friend, send this to someone who should be on the podcast or who would benefit from this podcast. And I look forward to hearing from you and continuing this conversation on making the invisible visible and valuing it. Bye.